Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for June 23rd, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our organizing webcast and podcast that we do every week, where we talk about all things organizing and hopefully give you strategies and tips to help you work on your projects. And we get a whole lot of those topic ideas from you and all the comments and emails you send at all of our various channels. So we really appreciate that you do that.
If you're joining us in the Zoom meeting for the first time, you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on to another topic. We are also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. And during the live webcast each Tuesday, you can also join us by calling 669-900-6833. Use meeting ID 993-419-863 to join the meeting. We're going to start with viewer feedback today. In response to last week's episode, which was about motivation and momentum, YouTube user The Driftwood Lover said, "Perfect subject. Motivation and momentum are keys to success. I started with my linen closet. It gives me a touch point to look at when I feel overwhelmed or discouraged. I go look at the decluttered, organized closet, and it gives a sense of peace and a reminder that this is where I'm heading with the whole place." Isn't that great?
I think it is fabulous that you created your own visual reminder of where you're trying to go. That's truly a motivator when it's your own space that's serving an inspiration. That's a great example and a perfect teasing for a future topic for us. Your comment ties into the topic that we're going to cover 3 weeks from now, which is measuring your progress. We're going to talk about ways to track what you've accomplished. So measuring your progress works as a continued motivation to keep going. And you are measuring your progress by going to the closet and looking at the finished job and saying, you know, here's the serenity that I'm trying to achieve, and this is one that's already complete. And it's a great way to keep yourself motivated, and I really like that. Good job. Yay.
We'll talk a little later about more upcoming topics. We've mapped out the next 5 weeks or so. But let's get to our featured topic because we have a lot to say.
I warned you.
Huh?
I warned them. I warned them.
True.
I have a lot to say.
It's true. Do you find yourself living in a very small space? Efficiency apartments, dorm rooms, mobile homes, the wildly popular tiny houses, and other compact living spaces create special organizing problems. Built-in storage is minimal or even non-existent. Kitchen and bathroom counter space are extremely limited, and you can forget about bringing in giant pieces of furniture to meet your needs. What you'll need instead is a little creativity and a lot of flexibility. Our topic today is Ain't No Big Thing, Organizing Small Spaces.
The first point that I need to make about small spaces is the point that I'm sure you know that I'm going to make, which is your smaller space isn't getting any bigger. We're going to talk about ways to optimize the space so you can make use of all that's available to you, but we can't help you wedge in huge amounts of excess stuff into every available pocket of your home and still promise you a livable space. Smaller real estate means you have to be very intentional about everything that lives with you. You don't have room to say, I'll just stuff this in a closet to deal with it later. Deal with it later requires more extra square feet than you get in small spaces. So no junk room, no junk drawer, no stashes of unknown items in the house and the apartment. You need to spend your time making sure that everything you want to keep has a place, everything that you use has a place, and the amount of keeping this just because is at a bare minimum. An associated piece of advice here is no large collections of anything. If you're living in a really small space, your collections need to be small too. In a small space, you need to focus on quality over quantity, and your collections need to be curated to fit your space. And that's, you know, collections of toilet paper or collections of Star Wars paraphernalia. And that means keeping a much tighter grip on your shopping impulse too. You don't want to stock up with lots of overflow on anything. Shop more often to replace as you run out instead of building a stockpile. And I realize that that advice is a little difficult in a pandemic in that you're not supposed to go to the store as much, but it just means that in the short term, you might make your every 2-week shopping trip and keep a little bit more than you would normally in your life. But this is one of those things where you need to shop to replace, not shop to build a stockpile. So on that note, you're remembering all of this advice as a backdrop, let's talk about small space organizing ideas. So the first one is, and this is a really critical one in almost every small space, you need to think vertically. You can't make your space any larger, but you can use more of it with vertical storage solutions, thinking like a bunk bed or a blanket ladder or high shelves up the wall. Consider small shelves on the wall, racks hanging from the ceiling, hooks on the walls or furniture, over the door hooks and holders. Think about how you can move your stuff up the wall to give you more space and better access. The next idea for small spaces is to go low. Make use of space underneath the bed or the dresser, or basically any furniture that's on legs. If you end up using furniture space that feels more public, like the living room, than private, like the bedroom, then consider making the container opaque and decorated to match your decor, or neutral colors to fade into the background. You can recapture some wasted space. So that is a topic, that's covering the backs of doors, especially the closet or bathroom doors, any tiny slot between a large piece of furniture and the wall, like the slot next to the refrigerator. Use the space above the toilet. Just be careful it doesn't stick out so far that you hit the head. You hit your head on something when you're getting on and off the toilet. That would be uncomfortable. Add containers to the windowsill. Use a curtain rod between cabinets. There's all kinds of space that is considered wasted, and you can look at those blanks anew and see if there's a way that you can recapture. You also have to be very ruthless about new clutter accumulation. So this may mean doing some decluttering tasks on a more frequent schedule than they're required in a larger space. Maybe you got to process the mail every day instead of once a week. You got to take recycling out every other day. Small spaces mean that delayed decisions and lack of systems to handle putting things away creates a cluttered mess in a really short period of time because there's no unused area to allow items to be stashed and ignored. So you really have to stay on top of things in a much more proactive way. I would suggest that you consider a strict one in, one out policy for new purchases. When all space is at a premium, one more new thing in the house is an instant problem. Once you've set up your home, being vigilant about what you add to it will help you keep it in good shape. Resist the urge to buy in bulk. So Americans love Costco. I don't know what the Costco phenomenon is in other parts of the world, but everybody loves to go to Costco and buy 150, rolls of toilet paper, as everybody did during the pandemic. But it's the basic concept of buying bulk gets you better pricing. And so wherever you do that buying bulk process, that is a big house coping mechanism. It does not work very well in small spaces. So if Costco shopping is really your thing, then I would, and you live in a small space, then I would consider going in together on bulk items with family or friends so that you can take advantage of the bulk pricing, but all the products don't end up at your house. If you guys go and buy a whole bunch of chicken or a whole bunch of paper towels or a whole bunch of dog food, you can come home and divvy up that collection so that you're not the one having to store 150 rolls of toilet paper in your small space, right? You want to divide the rooms into zones by function. So all small rooms in a small space have to serve more than one function, right? Unlike a big house that has a whole bunch of bedrooms, and here's the office, and here's the living room, and here's the dining room, and each room has one specific purpose. In a small space, there's going to be a whole lot less rooms, and each room is going to be serving more than one function for sure. So you want to adopt a zone technique inside the room and say, this is the section of that room where we're going to do office. This is the section of the room where we're going to do TV watching. This is the section of the room where we're sleeping. This is the section of the room where, who knows what else is going to be in the bedroom. But you're going to have to divvy up those rooms to serve more than one purpose to accomplish all the living you want to do in your small space. And so zoning out those rooms, the small rooms that you have, as if you have little rooms inside your room, will help you do all the things that you want to do in the space.
And helps keep things from overflowing. So, if you've designated this 12 square feet as the office, then that's what, that's all that you can fit.
Yeah, that's the little outline of the space, and you can't have any more than will fit in that outline. Yeah, absolutely. In the kitchen, you want to avoid the unitasker. So that's a definite add to this conversation. You want to keep a few high quality versatile tools that can serve multiple functions, but this rule really applies all around the house. Whatever tool that you're using, you want one that can solve more than one problem so that you can have the same amount of functionality in less tools so they take up less space. And that theory, that concept applies across the whole idea of a small space. Everything in there needs to solve more than one problem. It needs to serve more than one function so that you don't have to have multiple things to address that functionality.
Except your toothbrush. It's really all right if you only use your toothbrush to brush your teeth.
Right? Because once you start scrubbing things with it, it's a different tool. It needs to go out of the bathroom, right? Use space unconventionally. Ed and Jaime turned their unneeded coat closet in Houston into an overflow pantry. So who cares what the room was designed for? If you are a crafter and every night or every weekend you're working on some craft and you only have big family dinners a couple times a year in the dining room, then maybe in your small space, the dining room really needs to be set up as a craft room, and it just needs to have enough portable units so that you can move that crafting stuff out when you go to host your family dinners once a year or twice a year. Don't be trapped by how someone else, the real estate listing, the previous owner, used the space that you're living in. You just call it a room and define it how you want it. And you might solve your problem just by saying, I know this is supposed to be a dining room, but really I'm going to spend 95% of my time working from home, and I need this to be an office, not a dining room. Make furniture do double duty. That's a big one. A storage bench, an ottoman that is storage, a chest that is a coffee table, a secretary that's a bedside table, a headboard with shelving in it or little cabinet space in it. All those things, furniture that takes up space, it should do double duty somehow. And this is a really helpful way to add storage, where in a larger space you add storage by adding furniture. You add a bookshelf, you add a cabinet, you add a dresser, you add a buffet. In a small space, you don't have room to add big pieces of furniture. So finding furniture that is functional and useful and also has storage capacity is a way for you to sort of merge those two functions.
Darby has a comment. Our dining room has become our puzzle room, only place big enough for 5,000 piece puzzles.
That's ambitious. 5,000 piece puzzle. Wow.
That's a lot of pieces.
That's a big puzzle. Yeah, you got to have a big table space for that, for sure. Okay, last but not least, you want to shop for product solutions that will help you. So the biggest one is going to be a closet organizing system. Builders throw a closet in, they slap a rod in, they slap a shelf in, they call it done. No builder puts a whole lot of thought into making your closet efficient or effective. And so if you have some money to spend, spending it on designing the closet to work with the square footage that they give you is a good thing to do. It will help you make best use of that storage. And so container stores is that kind of, you take this dimensions and they help you design it, and you can, buy container store stuff put in. There's other more expensive closet systems if you want to go that route. You can also try the Home Depot or the Lowe's closet versions, and you'll have to design it yourself. But if you get an organizer, this might be a good way to spend some money with an organizer. Let an organizer come and look at your closet and help you consider and design what would work there, so that you get the most effective use of what little space you have. And that's going to be one of those places where if you can go up in a closet and add some shelving, or add some hooks on the wall, or add some better shelving where you have zero, then you can store a little bit more vertically in the closet, and you can make it easier to access the stuff that you're storing. Any small space is going to end up, really packed. It's going to be crunched in there, but if you lay it out well, you'll still be able to take things in and out and have a easy access to it, and you can make the most of your closet. So that's one where A, you're going to probably spend a lot of money. B, you might want to pull in professional help to do it. But if you do it with the closets that you have, you will maximize what little storage space they give you in a small space.
Jane mentions Elfa from the Container Store.
Yeah.
And she says it's awesome. And I second that. I've had a few Elfa pieces that worked really well. Slide out drawers to make better use of kitchen cabinet space and things like that.
And they also make a version that is freestanding. So instead of mounting on the wall, it actually is support rods that are on feet. So there's like feet that stick out and hold the thing up, and so the whole thing is mounted on itself instead of on the wall.
Nice. That's great, especially if you have something you can't screw into, like brick or plaster, that's hard to mount anything on.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can hang, the most of the closet systems don't have a lot to have to be attached to the wall, but they usually have some kind of a bar across the top against which support beams have to hang off of. And so you have to be able to screw at least the support walls in the top in the closet. If you can, if you're allowed to do that, awesome. And you can buy a regular system that mounts the top into the wall, and then everything else will hang off of that. But if you aren't allowed, or the material prevents, like some people, it's all concrete and you can't drill into it, it's too hard. So then they also make freestanding versions that sit on their own feet instead of being attached, and that will give you some shelving and drawers. Then you can still hang the roll-out shelves and things. And so there are ways to adapt, and it's a good place to spend money if you only have a few closets and it's the only storage space in the space that you have. It's a good way to spend. It's a good way to spend dollars that will be really helpful to you on the back end.
Good return on your investment.
Exactly.
Jane added, I took my closet floor to ceiling with Elfa. Being in Southern California, my space is pretty small. Leveraging vertical space has been hugely helpful. Getting a folding step stool helps too.
Yeah. Once you get it way up over your head, then you got to have the ability to get up there. And you also have to be very careful about, don't put super heavy things at the top, and then, you have to climb down the ladder with something heavy. So you want to be judicious about what you put way over your head, and make sure that you can get a ladder in there and that there's enough space. Like a lot of times I see people put shelves in a space and then they can't get something up and onto the shelf because the opening in front of the shelf is so tiny that they can't actually get any product on top of the top shelf. So just keep that in consideration when you're designing your space. Okay, have a few more products to suggest. Portable file boxes are a really great idea, and you need those for your most important files, so that you have some place to file valuable paper. And so it can do the double duty of storing your paper and also be grabbed and taken if you have to go out in an emergency. So instead of a file cabinet, find some portable file boxes and use those to store your paperwork in a small space. And then those can be moved around the house as you can take them out of a closet, work in them, put them back in a closet when you don't want to look at them, or you can grab them and run out of the house with them when you want to leave in a hurry. And since they predicted that the Gulf Coast is going to have a more active hurricane season this year, now would be the time to prep your paperwork in case you have to flee a hurricane. Lazy Susan is something that people think of as a dining room solution or a kitchen solution, but a Lazy Susan is a great way to put in a hard to reach corner of any kind of a cabinet. So, or a closet shelf, for instance. If you have a bunch of little things or a bunch of bottles or a bunch of, standing things that if you're in a pantry and the pantry's super deep, putting a Lazy Susan in the front and putting those things on a Susan so you can spin them means that the things at the back can circle to the front and you can grab it. They make, little ones that are 10-inch that will fit inside a typical upper kitchen cabinet that's, 10 or 11 or 12 inches deep. But they also make bigger ones, and you can use those in deeper cabinets. You can use them on a shelf in a closet. Just consider them as a solution for when you have a deep space that you're trying to reach and see everything in. Then putting a Lazy Susan allows you to make use of that space, put all the things on the Susan, and swivel it so that what's in the back comes to the front and makes it easy for you to grab. That's a no nail solution and no modification solution to any kind of a deep cabinet or shelf that you're trying to be able to see all of the stuff.
I'll add that I've used little tiny, I think maybe 9 or 10-inch Lazy Susans to increase capacity in the cabinet where we have spices. I have one of those at the lowest level that has all the stuff I use the most frequently, so I can, it's easy to see. And you lose some space in the back corners, but everything is very easily reachable without having to dig, and so I think it's
a good trade-off, right? Trading off of losing the little corners. You can't pack it as tight, but you can actually see everything.
And then another great space saver for spices is the spice stack, which we've talked about before. I bought a couple of those years ago and continue to use them, which is a little set of 3. It's a 3-drawer set that fits neatly in the shelf. I mean, it fits perfectly in the space for the cabinet where we keep spices. And I think it has 27 bottles, room for 27 jars, which there's no way you could store 27 things in a usable fashion in that space without this. So
yeah, and it's designed to fit in those upper kitchen cabinets that are 10, it's like 10 by 10 by 8 or something. And
right.
So
yeah,
it's designed to have a narrow footprint and to fit in the 10-inch cabinet, and you can still close the door, and then you pull out the shelves and they angle down so you can see the spices, and then you pick it up and slide it back in. And so it's a little plastic thing that is great. It's even great on a counter. You can put it on a counter and have this little white box there and pull out this, the shelves, and here's all the spices. So luckily there's lots of things to do with spices and make them accessible, but that concept spreads out of the kitchen. I've used Lazy Susans inside refrigerators before. It's a great way to, have sauce jars and bottles accessible and spinning in on a shelf in the refrigerator. So Lazy Susans can really be used in a lot of weird places that you don't think of as a good idea, but you'll find that they'll be really helpful.
Another great one for spices, Whitney added, my spices are on shallow picture ledges on the kitchen wall that can't take any furniture or cabinets. So those little tiny narrow shelves with just a little lip.
Okay, so the next one I want to add is bed risers. So bed risers are this really inexpensive, goofy thing that you stick under the feet of your bed frame, and it takes the bed 6 or 8 inches off the floor. But that 6 or 8 inches addition to what's already open under the bed gives you a little bit of space, a few more inches underneath the bed to stick things. It's a great way to make use of under the bed as sort of long-term out of season storage. It's a great way to put out of season clothing. It's a great way for, here's extra blankets or extra linens that go with the bed. Here's the box of, it's winter and I use this big heavy quilt on the bed in winter but not in the summer, and it can sort of slide back underneath. And so bed risers will take a regular bed frame and help you have a little bit more storage underneath the bed. The alternative is that you can also put under bed boxes that have wheels on them. They usually have little wheels. So they're long, narrow, they're probably 4 or 5 inches tall, and you can slide those under the bed. If you don't have bed risers, you can slide those under the bed and put the same kind of things out of season, linens for the bed, extra shoes, that kind of stuff can go under the bed and be out of the way.
Leela commented on the under bed storage and said, if you live in a humid climate, don't make the mistake I did by putting cardboard boxes under a bed in a carpeted room. I ended up with a mold problem.
Woo!
Plastic tubs instead. And your usual recommendation is clear plastic if you can get it, or at least if you can't get clear, then translucent, so that you can at least have some idea of what's in there without having to pull it all the way out.
Yeah, so it helps you target the correct box. And this is one of those things where making the extra effort to put a label on the outside will help you grab the right box under the bed. You can also, if you want to upgrade your bed, this is one of those dual function pieces of furniture. If you have you can buy a platform bed that has storage built in. So the platform sits on top of drawer system. So you've got drawers pulling out both sides of your bed. And that is a great way to substitute a platform bed with drawers and get rid of a dresser, for instance, so that if your room is tiny, your bedroom is tiny, and you want a queen bed in there, and it's not going to fit a queen bed and 2 dressers, and where are you going to put all your clothes? The platform bed provides you with an under bed dresser, basically. And so it's a great adaptation in a small space. Another one is a pot rack in a kitchen. Pots are a huge, large size, space-eating product that gets stored in the kitchen, and that's a great use of vertical space to get a pot rack and hang all of your big pots over your head on that rack. That will prevent them from going in what little cabinet space you have, and let you use those cabinet spaces for other things that you need. And then the pots are out of your way and up in the air.
Deborah shared in our teaser for this episode, we said our answer was not going to be just go to IKEA. But right? I think we can mention that yes, you can go to IKEA. IKEA really does have a lot of great stuff for small spaces. Deborah said her flat has not one closet.
That's the worst.
So she went to IKEA and got a PAX system, one that's targeted specifically for Europe, that is 236 centimeters high. I can't do the math in my head, but that's really tall.
Right? And that's great. And you're right. IKEA has a whole lot of, how to live in 200 square feet, how to live in 250 square feet. It's a great way to shop for all of the kinds of things that we've been talking about, dual purpose furniture and storage systems where things don't exist and things to go up the wall. And you can find a lot of examples at IKEA for that kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Well, and someone asked, and I apologize, it got away, so I'm not sure who it was, for favorite space savers. And so lots of people have been making suggestions and in the chat. And I was going to reiterate the folding stepladder.
Yes.
Which lets, in the last 2 places we've lived, it's let us take advantage of space above kitchen cabinets. We have kitchen cabinets that don't have a, there's no soffit. So there's
Right.
just space up there. And we put great big cookware that would eat up way too much space anywhere else, and some decorative things up there. And it's also, a step ladder is really handy when one of you is 6'4" and the other one is 5'5".
I was going to say, you are 6'4", so I would never have thought, look, above the cabinets next to the ceiling is a great storage space.
Right.
But for you, that's a great idea. And if he's willing to climb the ladder to take advantage, that's perfect.
And JC mentioned vacuum bags to change out clothes per season. If your closet is extremely limited, then the vacuum bags can let you take stuff out of the closet and pack it so it'll
flatten them
in good condition and store it under the bed. Or
and then you have a flat vacuumed something that can be stacked and slid under the bed and easily retrieved when you're ready. Absolutely. I would put a hanging tag on those bags so that you can sort of see the dangly tag and pull out the one that you're trying to get, so you don't have to unpack anything when it's trying to get one thing out of there. But yeah, I mean, if you can get a space bag that holds the suction air, stays out of it, and everything is collapsed, it's a great idea to slide and hide that stuff. Absolutely.
And in answer to someone's comment that the tall PAX units are expensive, Deborah mentioned Facebook Marketplace. She joined a local everything IKEA group and hunted and found things.
So people were trading out products
secondhand. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. There's always a way to find that stuff on as a used item if you need to. So just to wrap up here, I want to say, don't forget that you're choosing to live in a smaller space, so you need to manage your contents to reflect that size. Keeping stuff like you live in a bigger home just robs you of comfortable living space where you are right now. More than any other situation that I talk about, fitting into a small house and easily maintaining it and living comfortably will force you to evaluate everything you have. Each kept item eats up your available space, so it better be worth it.
Gayle, JC asked, do you have any creative ways or places to store bed comforters during the hotter months?
For bed covers during the hotter months?
Yeah, taking the comforters.
Oh, yeah, taking them off, you mean, and putting them away? So we mentioned the space bags. That's the perfect thing to go suction them out so that they make a much more tight square footage. And then if you take those space bags, if they're plastic and they're well sealed, then they can be not in the air conditioning if you need it to be. Or they can stand up next to, like the space that we talked about between a piece of furniture and here's a bookcase and a wall, and they can be slid behind or under. You can go and put things in under the couch or in under a chair or in under a table somewhere, but you run the risk of ending up getting it in the way of your feet when you're sitting on the couch or you're sitting in the chair. And so you have to decide.
Or collecting a lot of dust.
Right. Yeah. Collecting a lot of dust. So it needs to be out of the way. It's also, linens are a great thing to put way, way up over your head, right? So they're lightweight. If you climb up on the ladder and you have to pull linens down and you drop it on your head, you're not going to die. You're not going to get a concussion. So folding up those out of season linens and shoving them way up at the very top of something, it's still easy to grab and pull it down. If it expands to fill a space that is touching the ceiling, who cares? Because it's way up in the air. So if you have trouble making it fit, because most linen, like a blanket, you can't fold it up to be 12 inches wide very easily. And so you might consider rolling it and tying it so that it stays that size, and then you can make it sit on that shelf and it won't be like trying to tip off. They do, somebody's saying that comforters come in special bags. They do come in those, folded square. Good luck getting them back in the bag, but it's worth the effort if you only have to do it, once or twice a year that you have to shove it back into that bag. And then you can stand the bag up on an upper shelf and grab a corner of the bag when you're ready to pull it back down. And, you know, like I said, nobody's going to die from having the comforter drop on their heads. So it's a good idea.
And Anya added, there's an interesting YouTube channel about how to make small spaces pretty impractical on a budget. She says, I think a lot of it is not too practical, but some is great. It's by Alexandra Gator, Gater, from Canada. So
Okay.
I'll look for that and see if we can link to it, because we don't mind sharing the YouTube love.
Right. Right.
And Deborah said Marie Kondo, folding is everything in a small space. Marie is really into her folding.
Well, and you know, that's why all of the, you know, you fold everything up like little sandwiches and roll them up inside the drawer, and that is to maximize how much will fit in the space and you can still see it. And so that folding technique is supposed to make what storage space you have more efficient. Instead of you know, stacking it up from top to bottom, if you rack it up like a row, then you can see everything and you can fit everything in better. But it's an example of having to be more intentional about making stuff fit into the space. Small spaces are sort of the they're sort of the Achilles heel of anybody who is cluttery or has trouble managing stuff. Doing that, having that natural tendency of not wanting to be bothered with maintaining stuff and living in a small space is sort of a recipe for disaster. So it will either force you to change your behavior and change your habits, or you will be miserable because your small space will be cluttered all the time. You can hide more in a larger home, and you can have a junk room and throw things in without making decisions about them. And the small space just means you have no such luxury, and you really have to face, this is a project I have to take care of. This is a decision I have to make now because I don't have any hidey hole to stash it in this little bitty space. And somebody that lives in 250 square feet, there's literally no room for anything, and any extra cannot just be sitting around because it's sitting around in the one seat that you can actually sit in, for instance. So the smaller your space, the more minimalist leaning you have to be, and the more on top of it and vigilant you have to be about what you add in and what you keep, and putting things away all the time. Like, you can't go for 2 weeks without putting anything away because you will destroy your whole space in that time period. Unlike a bigger house where you can ignore it for a while and close the door that nobody's using that room very often, and eventually get back to it and clean it out. But you can't do that in a small space. You don't have enough, you don't have hidey holes to retreat to. So it's really important to stay on top of it if living in a small space is what you're doing right now.
Whitney also pointed out sometimes a dry cleaner will store out of season stuff if you pay to have it cleaned.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
well, they definitely will do that. You know, they do that with furs, for example. You know,
right.
But I have seen signs for that. Comforters, yeah. They will clean it, pack
clean
it,
them and store them,
securely, and store it for you. I don't know what it costs.
All right, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I have the perception if it hangs around too long, then they donate it. So I did not realize they'd added that service.
Well, and one of our users in Zoom said, yes, their dry cleaner donated theirs without warning. So that, but I would think that, you know, you have to have a, you know, clear agreement that you're paying for storage, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. And I do want to add that, you know, a lot of, like, there's some mid-rise apartment complexes in Houston now, and, you know, they're 3 or 4 stories high, and you get your apartment, and then you also get a little storage room as part of the deal, or maybe you can pay extra rent and get a little storage room. So you sometimes have access to off-site storage when you live in apartment complexes, buildings of you know, living space where they know that the space is small, and here's a little cage in a storage room where you can put some stuff. And so if you have that kind of access in your space, then you're going to go put Christmas decorations, or you're going to go put camping gear or things like that maybe in that little cage. But you might also consider, this is where the excess linens would go. Here's where the out of season clothes might go. They'll definitely need to be in containers because there is not a dust-free environment. And so
yeah, and
keeping it enclosed is good.
Space, but it's not climate controlled.
Yeah, so
everything has to be tightly secured.
And not going to be destroyed by heat. So you don't want to put a bunch of candles from Christmas into a room that's going to be 85 degrees all year round. So just consider what you're putting in there that can't be destroyed by whatever the climate is inside the room. But if you have any kind of space like that, then considering those, okay, now the big blanket, anything that's big and bulky needs to come out of your apartment when you're not using it and go into the alternate space.
All right, we are about out of time, and we have about 1,000 more comments and questions, and we're just going to have to save them. I think we're going to have to schedule space-saving ideas part 2.
Okay.
For a future episode.
Thank you guys for sharing a bunch of tips with each other. I'm really glad, because the more people that have ideas, the more sharing happens, and that's a great thing to do. Thank you.
Before we go, we want to announce our calendar of upcoming topics. You asked us to tell you topics further in advance, and we're trying to do it. So next week, our topic is, what is the boundary between you and your stuff, clutter and self-image? And then July 7th, we're going to take the week off. So we will meet next week. We will not meet the following week. We're going to take a break for U.S. Independence Day. So no show on July 7th. July 14th, we'll talk about measuring your progress. July 21st, collecting versus clutter. And July 28th, coupon clipping and bargain hunting.
That'll be a fun one.
I also want to remind anybody watching live about our YouTube channel. We have more than 100 videos on a variety of organizing topics. Go to cfhou.com/YouTube. And while you're there, click subscribe to get notifications whenever we post something new. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. And of course, if you would like to support our efforts financially, you can visit cfhou.com/Patreon, Patreon. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions on YouTube or on any of our channels, and you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
We are always so grateful that you guys join us to chat about all things organizing, and I am so grateful that everybody had so much tip sharing going on today in the chat. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is help you guys get ideas and improve your life in this way, and we're really grateful that you were here today. We will see you next week, and we can't wait to see you. Bye. Bye.